Melanie Leonard, in addition to being willing to take on the responsibility of handling the mentoring program, has a very well-developed practice. She actually graduated from law school. She graduated from a very good law school, Chicago-Kent College of Law. She's been practicing in DuPage County for a number of years, and her volume has grown to the point where she needs to have a very streamlined operation. So she has taken the time to invest in some means and some software to help her accomplish this. So she's going to talk to us this morning about practice management systems, what they can be used for. Is it more than just billing? She's going to shed some light on this, and we're very thankful to have her. Melanie Leonard.
Good morning. Let me turn on this microphone here. How's that? Good morning.
Works.
As Ralph said, my name is Melanie Leonard. Thanks so much for having me here this morning. I really put together this presentation because I talk to a lot of people that are either using practice management software or looking into practice management software, and I hear the same comments over and over, and basically it's like, I use it all the time for my billing and it's fantastic and I love it. But there's so much more that people aren't necessarily using it for that I think could be of a great benefit. So that's why I wanted to talk to you a little bit today, like 45 minutes today, about what else you can do with your practice management software and how else it's going to benefit you in addition to that billing, which of course is oh so important. So just a little bit about me. I do have a practice down in Naperville. We only do residential real estate, day in, day out. That's the kind of stuff that we're dealing with. So when I started my practice, I started looking around at different software. And in full disclosure, I do use Clio. I am a Clio certified consultant, which means that I both have been trained in Clio and am able to resell Clio. But the reason I'm talking to you today is not necessarily because of Clio specifically, but because of the whole practice management genre. My opinion is that the best practice management software is the one you're going to use. So if it's not Clio, if it's not Smokeball, if it's not Practice Panther, if it's not, I mean, there's a ton of them out there. I went to the ABA Tech Show downtown about 8 years ago, and there were, all I did was go to the exhibit hall with the booths there, with all the vendors, and there were 2 practice management softwares there. Clio was there and Time Matters was there. And the rest of the show was just made up of other vendors. I went 2 years ago and there was only one booth that wasn't practice management software. So really the rise in options has really just grown tremendously. And there's a lot out there to choose from. So we're going to talk a little bit today about what features might benefit your firm, because the reality is I don't know all your practices, and each of you has a little different practice, a different way of doing things. So I don't know what's going to benefit you most, but I'm going to point out the things that I think could. Why have practice management to begin with? A couple of reasons. Really, in my practice, it seems like the practice management software works as a shared brain. Basically, it's keeping track of all of our contacts, all of our deadlines, what everyone is doing so that we're not duplicating work. So the idea is, when you call into my office and say, hey, I represent Mr. Smith, we're doing a deal, we're closing next week, can you tell me, did you guys send over a survey yet? There's no need for you to be transferred to the paralegal that's working on that file or to find me who might be out of the office. You can ask any one of my staff and they can go and look, yes, it was sent to you on this day and this is when you should have received it via email, this is the address it was sent to. All that information should be saved in that practice management software. Now, of course, it all depends on how well you're using it. If you don't put it in there, then you're not going to get it out. But the idea is that it's working as a shared brain. Now, why do we care about this? Obviously, it makes us more efficient, but the other thing that I would encourage you to think about are 2 different situations. In my situation, I'm looking to grow my practice. And so I'm looking to hire more attorneys, more paralegals, do more closings per year. That's my business plan. However, there may be some of you out there that have other business plans which might include retiring in the near future. Maybe you're looking to sip that margarita on the beach, not just once every 3 years, but maybe once every 6 months. So if you're in that kind of a situation, the other things you want to think about are possibly selling your practice. Are you going to be able to get any money for this business that you've built over all these years? And some of the most valuable things in selling a real estate practice are past client lists and policies and procedures. So how does your office work? How does your office handle a real estate file or a will or whatever it is that you're working on? And who have you worked with in the past? Those are some of the key things that a potential buyer would be looking for. And the practice management system is a fantastic way to not only keep track of the people that you've worked with in the past, but also to keep track of those procedures. Because as we'll see in a few minutes, you're going to put the procedures for everything you do into that practice management software. So that when the time comes for you to do a closing or prepare a will, it's all going to be laid out there in the tasks of the practice management. And your staff and yourself are going to know exactly what to do when. And you're going to know this and be able to pass this on to future buyers of the law firm. So definitely two huge reasons that you may want to consider practice management software if you're not already using it, or to use it more robustly. Okay, so we talked a little bit about this. You know, what are your goals, whether they're to expand or whether they're to sell the practice at some point. Let's see. Just to give you a quick example as to how I'm growing my practice. So, of course, you know, we need to know if we've ordered the survey on a property. We need to know if we've ordered the title commitment. We need to know where we are in that progress. But what we're also trying to do is we're trying to provide a very individualized service. And we're trying to get to know our clients and get to know how they like to work. Do they want to hear from us by fax? Do they want to hear from us by phone? You know, what is their preference? And it's those little things that are going to make them not just you know, clients that decide to repeat business with us, but make them raving fans so that they're the ones talking to other people about us. Oh, you're buying a house, you should go talk to Melanie, you know? So those are the little details that I'm able to track in my practice management software. You know, I know what attorneys don't want faxes, all they want is emails. And it's in there so that my whole staff knows too. Trust me, my memory is not that good. I mean, you could ask me about some of my files now and I would have to go straight to the practice management software to be able to tell you, you know, where we are in the process. But that's the idea. The idea is you could ask me, you could ask, you know, I have one full-time assistant, you could ask her, I have a part-time assistant, you could ask her. We're all going to have the same information and all know the same thing because it's in there. So that when your client, you know, calls you up because this is the third time they've gotten a fax, and the fax machine's at their office and they don't get the faxes right away and they're frustrated because now they don't get the information and everyone at the office saw that, you know, that's something that a good practice management software can help you keep track of those details. Now, again, since I do use Clio, I will tell you that all my screenshots are in Clio, just because that's what I'm most familiar with and have the most access to. But again, most of the features that I'm going to talk about are not just available in Clio, they're also available in a lot of the other softwares as well. And by the way, if you're shopping for practice management software, go to the ABA Tech Show. I mean, there's no better way than to be able to walk around a room and talk to about 100 people about their 50 different softwares and get a real taste for what's going to work best for your practice. So let's talk practically. How are we going to use this in our office? I mean, the idea of having another piece of software or another computer program or another screen to look at sometimes can be overwhelming, which is a reason why I encourage you to put all of your information in one place as much as possible. Now, of course, there is not one software that is going to run your whole office, but there are some that can come pretty close. So just as a practical matter, when I'm working at my desk, Clio and many of the others are, you can find practice management softwares that are web-based, meaning you don't have to have a server or anything like that. So when I'm working at my desk, this is just a sample screenshot. This is my Clio window that I've got up in my browser, but keep in mind I've got DocuSign here because I've got a lot of clients that are working with me through DocuSign to sign documentation. I actually use 2 Clio browser tabs because I want to go back and forth between different screens and different matters. I've got my, I've got my calendar here, and then I've got my email box on the end there. Don't be alarmed by the 143 unread emails. I've actually read them. I just have a little goofy system that keeps them marked as unread. Anyway, the point is, This screen right here allows me to jump back and forth very quickly between all the different things that I'm using to run my law firm. Now, if you are a Windows-based, if you're not using a Mac, this is a Mac obviously, but if you're not using a Mac, you're using Windows of some type, similar kind of idea. I mean, I've got a window here for Clio, I've got a window here for Word, I've got a window there for viewing PDFs. So get familiar with how your computer or operating system works to be able to toggle back and forth quickly between the information that you need, because again, there isn't going to be one piece of software that's going to hold every single thing that you need or want. A lot of software these days also has an app for your phone or for your tablet. Find out about that as well, because the reality is the easier it is for you to use, the more likely you are going to use it. So if you're very comfortable with your phone, or if you're very comfortable with your tablet, or if you're always out of the office, maybe you want to get comfortable with those tools, find a software that is going to allow you to do things on the fly while you're in court. Add that next court date right into the practice management software while you're, well, hopefully not while you're literally driving, but maybe when you stop, then add information into there, because that's going to help you. The easier it is to get the information in, the more likely you're going to use it and the more helpful it's going to be. The other thing that I always recommend is once you start working with a software, talk to the other people either in your office or out of your office, frankly, that are using the software as well, because they're going to help you figure out things that would take you much longer to figure out on your own. So for example, in my example here, many software, practice management software programs have multiple ways to do things. So for example, in this example here, we want to add a new person. I just got a call from a real estate agent. They want to refer me a client. Awesome. I want to make sure I remember who they are. So I want to stick them in this software. Well, in Clio, there's about 5 different ways you can do that. In most programs, there's multiple ways. Depending on what I'm working on at the time, one way might be faster, one way might be easier. I might not have known about the third way. Here we've got new person, here we've got a new person, here we've got add a person. There's like 5 different ways that you can add a new person here in Clio. And similarly with other programs. So talk to other users is my point, so that you can figure out what method of doing things within the software is going to be easiest for you. Because again, depending on your situation, there may be one that works better in different situations or different offices. Okay, so I'm not going to lie, sometimes my desk looks like this, except that I don't drink coffee. But I feel a little bit like in creating my office to be an almost paperless office, I really get more sticky notes than I have 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, because I'll be working on something and I'll jot something down. And the idea is to eventually put it in my software or to give the information to someone. But the reality is sometimes it ends up looking like, what was that first screen we had here? I feel like I took a picture of my computer, because that's kind of how it works. And then I've got sticky notes down here too. Well, the problem is when you close up that computer and you stick it in your bag, then the sticky notes go everywhere. So the point is, sticky notes are not a very effective practice management system. So instead, how are we going to get this information off the sticky notes or wherever you've put it into the software so that you can share it? Because the reality is, most of my assistants don't work in my office. One of them does. The other 2 are outside of my office. So if I want to get them information, they're not going to see the sticky note on my desk. Even my assistant that works in my office, when she comes into my office, she may or may not understand what that sticky note means. So instead, what I would recommend is to look at your own practice. Do you have an admin that would be able to or be efficient to put that information into the practice management software for you? If you don't, would it be worth you hiring a high school, college student just for data entry? Because at some point, that's not, well, I'd say at the beginning point, that's not going to be the highest and best use of your time. Because obviously, if you're able to bill however many dollars an hour, or get however many closings done in a month, data entry is probably not the highest and best use of your time. So figure out a way for somebody else to be able to put that information in for you. or figure out a way that's easiest for you. So for example, we were talking about the iPhone or the tablet applications. You know, if those are easier for you to just do on the fly, that's fantastic. But again, don't go into it thinking, okay, now I have the software, this is going to be awesome. You have to actually spend the time and energy, either you or somebody within your organization, to put that information in there, because without the information in there, it's not going to be any use to you. You want to do things like, as soon as somebody calls into your office, I mean, this is what I do. If somebody calls into my office, I open up the software, I put in, I click on that new person button, wherever the 5 places it is, and I type in their name as soon as they say it. I ask them how to spell it. We talk a little bit. Eventually, I'm going to ask them for their contact information. The screen's still up there, so I type it in when they tell me. I don't write it down. I never write down an email address, a phone number, because I know I'm going to lose it. That's just me. I put it straight into the practice management software. Now, maybe you are better at saving sticky notes than I am. That's fantastic. But again, in order to have that information be the most helpful, you're going to want to get it into the software as quickly as possible. It also helps me being able to create things like mailing lists. Let's say that person that called that I put in there never actually hires us. That's fine. At least I have their contact information, and I've captured their information to be able to add them to a mailing list, add them to an email list, add them to, make a phone call, follow up with them a month later. Hey, I know you were looking to buy. Is that still something that's in your future? So in order to track that person, it's going to be a lot easier if they're in there. Now, another thing I want to bring to your attention is there are many programs out there, but really the best for this purpose is called Zapier. And what Zapier does is Zapier makes different apps work together, or different programs work together. So for example, let's say I did invest in Clio and I start using it in my practice management, and I had been using Google Docs for forever, or I'd been using MailChimp for my email newsletter. Zapier will make different apps work together. So I could take information out of Clio and put it into Google Docs, or vice versa. It could feed the information into Clio. So if you have programs that you're already using, it doesn't mean you have to just scrap them and start putting stuff into your practice management software. There may be a way for you to integrate those 2 programs together for either the purposes of just moving the data into your practice management, or if you want to continue using those programs because maybe they add something that your practice management doesn't, then you can use them together and have the information duplicated in both systems so that you're not constantly switching back and forth and looking for the information that you need. Okay? So I'd also recommend, Zapier is a fantastic, has a fantastic website where they list about more than 500 apps that they work with. This is just like a screenshot of some of the apps that they work with. But the best thing I find is this list of categories over here. They categorize all the apps that they work with and tell you what kind of stuff they do. So for example, if you're looking for a voice over IP phone system, if you're looking for a new email new email client, anything like that, essentially take your problem, this is what I do, take my problem to Zapier, look through their list of apps, find the ones that work with Zapier, because then I know they're going to work with my practice management software or any of the other programs that I use, and find an app that's going to solve your problem. So that because when you get it off this Zapier website, you know that it's going to be able to work with some of the other apps that you currently have. Okay?
How do you spell that?
Yes, Zapier. Zapier makes you happier. That's what they say. I don't work for Zapier, by the way. Okay, so again, my overarching idea here is that the easier you make it, the more likely people are going to be to use it within your office or outside your office, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But the example that I wanted to give you, which I think is just brilliant, is Amazon. So does anybody have one of these buttons on their washing machine? No, not yet. Don't worry, you will. For those of you who haven't heard of these are called dash buttons, I think. And basically they have them for Tide, they have them for granola bars, they have them for toilet paper, they have them for anything. It's a little button that basically Amazon sells to you for like $5. And you stick it next to your washing machine, and when you run out of Tide, you click the button. 2 days later, the Tide shows up at your house, right? So the brilliance of it is that Amazon saw that from the time that people were washing their clothes to the time that they would go to the computer and place an order for Tide, they were losing people. They lost interest, they forgot, they ran out of time. They thought, oh, the store's on my way home, I'll just grab it on the way home, it's no big deal, right? So how brilliant is it? They looked to make it as easy as possible. And that's what I would encourage practice management software companies to do as well. You know, the easier you make it, the more likely people are gonna do it. So you better believe if I have a button like this next to my washing machine, I'm gonna be clicking it all the time. Even if I don't need Tide, just to see how fast it gets there. Now, of course, the risk being, if you have children like I do, they're gonna push the button too, and you're gonna end up with a lot of Tide. Now, they did actually think of that problem, and you can set this up to either have to confirm it on your phone or something like that, or you don't have to. You can just press the button and it comes. Anyway, my point is, the easier you make it, the more likely people are going to use it. And keep that in mind when you're looking at your staff and trying to get buy-in from them as well, because again, if the people in your office are not using this software, it's not going to be very helpful to you. The same with you. If you're not using it, it's going to be less helpful as well. So let's talk about some of the things that you're going to want to do within your practice management software, some of the features you're going to want to use to make it easier and so that people will actually use it, and how those are going to benefit you. Before I move forward, do you guys have any questions? No? You guys all going to go out and get your dash buttons? Seriously, they have them for everything. It's crazy. Granola bars. Who needs a granola bar that bad? Although I am all about convenience. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about calendars. We're going to talk about tasks. We're going to talk about contacts, communications, email integrations, documents, custom fields, mobile apps. All these things that are going to help you. Now, your practice management software, whatever you pick, may or may not have all these features, but I'm willing to guess that they have pretty much all of them. They don't all have mobile apps yet. They don't all have custom fields yet. It just depends on the software. But keep in mind, each software has its own strengths. You know, a lot of you use Smokeball, I know. Smokeball is fantastic as far as their form documents, as far as their integration with your email. Those are their strengths, absolutely. Billing is new to Smokeball, so if that's something that's really important to you, you might want to check that out first. You know, Clio has their strengths as well. They work with a lot of other programs. They have a lot of integrations. That's really something that's been very important to them. There are other softwares that, you know, have their own strengths also. So again, check out that ABA Tech Show. You'll learn a ton. Okay, so let's start with your calendar. Why do you want to put your calendar in your practice management software? I would suggest to you that not only, of course, keeping track of your own calendar events, you'll also want your staff to be able to keep track of them as well. Now, some people say to me, well, I'm just one person, I don't have an assistant yet, I don't have anything, it's just me, I don't really need a practice management software. You may not. You may essentially have your own practice management systems in place that don't take advantage of a particular software, and that's fantastic. But I will say that when you see some of the features and some of the things that these practice management softwares can do, you may want to reconsider because it's not only going to help you stay more organized, but it's going to help maybe your clients, depending on what software you choose. Some of them have client portals. It will help co-counsel if you're working with somebody else on a case, even just for one particular matter. You can share information with them as well. And depending on the software, there's not always an extra fee for that. It's not like it's a separate license. So that's something that you might want to look into as well. Even if it's just you, there's still ways that practice management software can help you. So in this particular slide, this is just a screenshot of the client portal that Clio offers, where I'm telling my clients, you know, when their closing is, where they need to be, when. And I post deadlines and stuff up there as well so that they can be involved and have the information. Because I'll tell you what this does. Obviously, it gives them the information, but it prevents them from calling my office 100 times because they forgot when the closing was or where the closing was. Now, obviously, you're going to have people that call your office anyway just because they like to talk, and it's an easier form of communication for them. But I will suggest to you that, especially first-time home buyers these days, a lot of them would much prefer to get a text or have the information saved in a portal somewhere where they can look at it at their own convenience and not have to call your office, because just like the dash button, there is a disconnect between when the client thinks of something and has to actually initiate communication with you. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but they're going to be frustrated if they don't get the information. And maybe it was because they didn't initiate the communication. That maybe, that's something that they've made a decision to do. But keep in mind that in the end, they're going to look at it as your fault. You're the one that didn't give them the information. You're the one that didn't share it with them. So the more and the better, easier that you can share information with your clients, the happier they're going to be. In this particular software, it also gives us a calendar view if your clients are more visual that way. But also for those of you charging hourly, not just for real estate, but obviously we have practitioners out there that are doing other things. When you are billing hourly, it makes that billing so much easier because now you're not going back and looking at the calendar and thinking, hold on, did I bill for that? How much time was that? It's in your software, so the steps to getting it to a billing and getting it on a bill and paid are so much faster and easier because in most systems, if it's on the calendar, they give you a quick little button to press and now you're billed for it. And they've already got the time because you told them how long it was going to take. Obviously, you may need to adjust that, and that's okay. But the default information is already there. The matter's there, the time is there, how long it took, what day it happened, what it was it a hearing or whatever it was. So all that information is already in there, and it makes, and there's an example of it being in there, it makes the billing that much faster and that much easier, and again, more likely to happen in a contemporaneous manner because it's that much easier. Now, don't let this slide freak you out. This is my calendar on a particularly busy day. But keep in mind, this is my whole calendar. So the stuff in green is the stuff on my practice management software. So for example, I had an IRELA meeting that morning. I had a WCR thing that day. So all the green stuff is my work. The blue is my son. And yes, I have to put his school on there or else I'll forget to send him to school. And the pink is my daughter. She also goes to school. That's on there too, or else she wouldn't get there. And then the purple and some of the other colors are my husband's schedule. So the reason I bring this up is because in my world, it makes my life so much easier to have that calendar kept in the practice management so I can keep track of my work and combine that, sync it with a Google Calendar that has my personal life on it. So I'm not in a situation where I forget about some work thing when I'm looking at my personal calendar. The two of them sync. A lot of the calendars in the practice management software these days do sync. So you may want to look for that because again, if you're working with multiple people, multiple organizations, a husband that runs his own business, 2 kids that think they need to go to swimming and taekwondo. It's all on there and it helps track things very easily. So for family planning, it's a great benefit. Maybe you don't have a family, maybe it's just you. Then in that case, one of the other benefits is you can, if your calendar and your practice management syncs with another Google Calendar, let's say, or any other kind of calendar, you can take advantage of programs like this. This one's called Calendly. And Calendly will help you to calendar appointments with clients or other attorneys or whoever. And the way it works is that it syncs with my calendar that I've kept in my practice management software. So when I have a client that says, oh man, I just got my contract, I need to review it with Melanie, I say, great, go on my website, go click on the button and you can set up your appointment. There's no emails back and forth that say, hey, are you available at this time? And then by the time that client answers, that time's already taken by another client. So I don't spend all that time, energy, and money trying to calendar events. Not just me, but I don't have to pay anyone else to do it either. This computer program is going to do it for me. This particular one's like $10 a month, but there are others. There's one called Square Appointments, made by the people that do the Square credit card processing. The nice part about that one is that they will allow you to go ahead and collect payment when someone makes the appointment. So for example, if you are charging a consultation fee for your initial consultations, they can collect that fee for you at the time that they're making the appointment for the initial consultation. So my client goes online and they see, oh, she's available Tuesday or whatever, Monday, and then it shows all the different times I'm available. They pick the time that they want. and they go ahead and make the appointment. It just pops up on my calendar. Now I have rules, of course, like, don't make it within 20 minutes of this other appointment so that I have a buffer time or something like that. So you can set those rules up yourself, but the reality is it saves so much time and money for me not to have to schedule those appointments. And as you saw from the screen before, there's, well, you can't see them all. There's like 6 different types of appointments that I have, depending on the situation. Of course, they're all different times. One's 20 minutes, one's 30 minutes, one's an hour, whatever. So definitely something that I'd look into. And again, data entry is probably not the highest and best use of your time. So if you start working with the software, talk to them, because many of these programs will transfer information from one calendaring program to another for you, or one contact database to another one for you. So don't think that you have to do that all yourself. So if you're already using a calendar, it's probably easier to just sync that calendar with your practice management software, if that's something it can do, than to have to start over and start a whole new calendar. Okay, and again, how are we going to make this actually usable? How are people actually going to put this into practice? Well, they're going to find software that has a mobile app or has a tablet app, or get comfortable with those apps so that you guys are using them when you actually make the appointment and not have to transfer that information later. Also, think about using different calendars for different people or different things. So for example, on here I've got my calendar, I've got the firm calendar, I've got the conference room. My conference room has its own calendar. So again, we don't have to spend a lot of time talking about who's going to be in the conference room when. We can go on and do other things, because everyone's got access to the conference room calendar, which is right up here. We also track deadlines on our calendar. So we've got a separate calendar up there in the purple for deadlines, so that we know when the deadline, everybody knows when the deadline is. I actually also have another system that we use where we'll put an asterisk in front of the deadline once it's already been met. So I can look at my calendar and say, oh, okay, we had deadlines, but we've met them all, we're good for today, right? At a blink of an eye, because what was happening was I would have, a list of 4 or 5 deadlines, and then not remember, wait, did we do that one yet, or do we need to still worry about it? So that was a very quick cue for me to be able to look at that and know that all the deadlines have been met.
Question.
Yes?
Is that within your Clio system?
This one in particular is within Clio, yeah. Oh, sorry.
She's asking if it was within the Clio system.
Yes, this particular screenshot is from within Clio. But again, most practice management softwares do include a calendaring portion where you can either track events or deadlines. Clio actually will track them multiple ways. Clio will do an all-day appointment at the top, so I can see the deadline set aside from other 12 o'clock appointments or whatever. But then it will also, when we talk about tasks in a few minutes, for each particular task that you're doing within your office, you can set a deadline for that as well. So there are multiple ways that you can track deadlines from within. Now, again, I used to work at a firm where they did not have practice management software at the time. They had 2 calendars, and anytime you wrote down anything, like a hearing or something, you had to write it in 2 calendars, because one of them would go home at night with whoever, and one of them would stay in the office, and God forbid something burns down, either the guy's house or the office, now we have a copy. Again, with the cloud, we don't have to worry about that so much, because this is backed up on multiple servers in multiple different locations. So the theory is, I feel like I need some wood to knock on. The theory is that this is never going to be a problem for us. I don't say that with really much hesitation. I've been using this software since 2008, never had an issue like that. Let's see. So next, we're going to talk about tasks, which we alluded to in just a few minutes ago. So why are we using tasks in our practice management software? Tasks are like my favorite thing, because they are essentially checklists. So remember when we first started doing real estate and we had checklists, we have to get a survey, we have to get the title commitment, we check it all off. Essentially, tasks are a checklist within my office, but I can do so much more with them than just that paper checklist. So for example, in advance, I can tell the software who's going to do what task. So for example, I have one assistant that she's always in charge of ordering surveys. I have another one who's always in charge of ordering title commitments. But if for some reason, either the one assistant isn't there or we're changing something up for some reason, I can always reassign that to somebody else. But there's a default position where the software knows, okay, new file, we know that Karen's going to order this survey on this day, Susan's going to order the title commitment on this day, and so on and so forth. So that I'm not spending my time saying, okay, now you need to do that, now you need to do that. They're not coming to me saying, what am I supposed to be doing? It shows up on their computers every day. Here's a list of what you're supposed to be doing. So obviously, I'm going in there and I'm overseeing it. I mean, I look at those task lists every day and say, okay, yeah, she should be doing that, she should be doing that. No, you know what, we're gonna hold off on this because they didn't pay something. Or we're gonna hold off on this because we're waiting for the mortgage approval. So things are being moved around constantly, but the idea is they're not gonna be completely missed because there's something that pops up every day that says, hey, take care of this. And either I move it or somebody actually takes care of it and it gets checked off. Yes? I'm sorry, do you want to wait just 1 second for the microphone? Thanks.
In regards to the tasks, for every file that you have, do you recreate the same tasks for each individual file?
Good question. No. So most software out there will have, they call them different things, but essentially prepared lists where if I'm doing a real estate closing, it knows the 20 things I told it we have to do. If I'm doing a motion to dismiss, there's 6 things that we have to do. So anytime that I get a new file in the office or we're using a new approach in litigation, then I'm going to stick that task list in there and it knows what things we're supposed to do. Now obviously you have to set this up all in advance. So it's not like they're just automatically in there. There are some softwares where you can purchase these lists, so to speak. The only thing I would caution you about is if it's not local to your jurisdiction, it may or may not be exactly what you want. I find it much more helpful. I know in my own head what I want to do with each file, so I find it much more helpful to create my own list because really you do it once and then you use it into perpetuity. So it really does seem to be worth the time. Okay, so it cuts back on a lot of the communication. We do have weekly meetings in my office as to what's going on with this file, what's going on with that file. But it's not because we don't know, because it's all in the software. It's more so that we can talk strategy and we can talk about what approach we want to use with this particular client or with this particular attorney or this particular situation. So we're spending far less time talking about, did you do this survey? Did you, is the survey here? Well, yeah, because it was checked off and it's in the software. So, our conversations become much more productive and much more higher level where we're talking strategy and we're talking about how we want to handle a situation as opposed to exactly what we want to do. Again, with that software that has a client portal, you can also assign tasks to your clients. Some of my clients never look at this, and that's fine. Some of my clients think it's the best thing ever. If you're a very, very visual or task-oriented person, which some of your clients may be, then they may love seeing the fact that I just assigned them a task. They need to send me this documentation. They need to send me the old survey. They need to whatever they're going to do. So that can be helpful as well when you're working with software with that feature. We talked a little while ago about having procedures in your office, and that's one of the valuable things when you go to sell a practice that people are looking for. So what I do is I put my procedure right in the task. So every time that I get a new matter and it pops up, start a new Clio matter for my assistant, so she goes in and makes the new matter, there's a list of 10 things she's supposed to be looking for or doing, okay? So the procedure on how to do the task is right in there. And the reason I do that is for a couple of reasons. Number one, it helps her when she's training. If she doesn't know what she's supposed to be doing or how to do it, it's all written right there. So I don't have to keep telling her every time, now how do I do this again? No, it's written right there, right? Obviously we go through it so she understands, but it's that constant reminder so that she's not missing things. The other reason I do it, not just for training, but for, again, checklist purposes or quality assurance purposes, so that she's always has that reminder and doesn't have to quick look through the procedures manual, which by the way I don't have because all my procedures are in here. But she doesn't have to look through the procedures manual to find the page to find what she's looking for. It's right there when it comes up and tells her to do something. It also includes how to do it, and I didn't have to sit there and tell her myself. This part I'm going to fly through, but if you want more information on it, please come and talk to me because I think it's hugely beneficial, especially to people charging flat fees. So I often get asked, I charge a flat fee, should I bill my time? Why would I bill my time in Clio or any other practice management software or track my time? My answer is yes, and the reason is that you should, so that you can figure out if your flat fee is actually covering the work you're doing. Or maybe, frankly, you don't want to know. But if you want to know, this is what you should do. So you start by making your list of tasks. Now, you were going to do this anyway because you were going to put it in your practice management software to make your lives easier. But once you have your list of tasks, you're going to follow up with who's going to do that task. Now, I don't really have all these different people in my office. Right now, either I'm doing it or one of my assistants is doing it. But the idea is I'm planning for the future and trying to figure out who's going to do these tasks in the future. And I'm trying to figure out if I'm charging an appropriate rate, which is going to cover the work that I'm doing. So most task management softwares practice management softwares will also allow you to make timing or set timing for your tasks. So maybe you do this task on day 1, you do this task 3 days later, you do the next task 5 days later. It will put in default timing for all those tasks, which is awesome because then you can adjust that timing always, but at least things aren't getting missed and at least things generally are showing up at the time that you're supposed to be doing them. I set all my tasks up for a 30-day close when I'm doing real estate, but as we all know, things don't always close in 30 days, and that's fine. I can push things out, but I'd much rather have those things earlier rather than later. So I go through and I say, how long is this going to take me to do? And I estimate that. How much is it going to cost me? Because of course I have to pay someone to do these things, or it's taking my time, which I also would like to be paid for. I figure out how much it's going to cost. I do the math. I add all of these numbers up because now I know what I'm doing, how long it's taking, how much it's costing me to pay someone to do it, and I'm figuring out how much it's going to cost me to do a real estate closing. Now, in an ideal world, that's going to be less than what I'm charging, right? If it's not, we have another problem. But the idea is that a practice management software makes this very easy for you to do because you're already going through and listing out your tasks. And so then to do this analysis could be very helpful for your practice as well. Okay. Again, how are we going to put this into practice? Assign a person when a new real estate contract comes in. Go ahead and put this into Clio. It's your job. Have those task lists already pre-made so that my assistant can go in and say, sale, here's all of our tasks for a sale. Purchase, here's all of our tasks for purchase. Bank-owned property, here's all of our tasks for that. You can make them as detailed as you'd like. Contacts, why are we putting our contacts into practice management software? Again, shared brain. When that person calls, Susan calls, and she's only spoken to me before, well, now my receptionist can greet her, of course, very politely, very kindly, but also go in and look at what information do we know about Susan. Is there something nice that she can say? Oh, Susan, I see you're calling. I assume you're calling about your sale. Is there something I can help you with? She's never talked to Susan in her life. She may not even know we have a new client, but it pops up telling her that we do. And that's going to make the client love us even more. What I do, again, my memory is not that good. So if you were to call me on the phone, some of you I might recognize your names, others I wouldn't. So I have this screen on my computer all day long, and when you call me and I answer the phone, and you say, hey, it's Jack Smith, I'm going to type in Jack Smith in that search bar real fast, and it's going to come up with results and show me Jack Smith. Okay, well, this example is Mike Langelieri. So I remember Mike, but if I didn't, it shows me okay, who's Mike? Well, it shows me that Mike, these are the deals I'm doing or have done with Mike in the past. And so I'm going to go to that screen and look, okay, he's probably calling about the most recent one, which is Jones, okay? So then I'm prepared a lot faster to be able to talk about Jones instead of trying to figure out, okay, wait a minute, what file is he talking about? Now he's going to tell me, but you know, if any of you have met Mike, he's going to talk about his client, and he's going to tell me his client's name, and I may or may not remember his client's name. So definitely something that is beneficial in trying to keep the information straight. Because when you get to a volume where you can't remember it all yourself, and for me that was like more than 5 files, then this is definitely come in handy. Now, the other thing that I would recommend is if your practice management software allows you to use pictures, do it. Because here's what's going to happen. I know you've all had this experience where you walk into a closing and you've talked to these people on the phone like 100 times and you have no idea what they look like. So you walk in and you have no idea which one's the lender, which one's the agent, which one's the client. A lot of people are on social media these days, on the internet. It is very easy to find pictures of people. And so you'll walk in, you still may not know for sure because some of the pictures are aged, but you'll have a much better idea of who these people are. And you better believe if I walk up to my client or the real estate agent that I'm working with for the first time and say, oh, Karen, it's so great to meet you, that's going to make a much better first impression than if I walk in the room and I'm like, okay, who's who? That's not going to be as impressive. So the idea is to ingratiate yourself with the knowledge that you have. And if you're able to save this information in your practice management software, that's going to be a lot easier. I have this on my phone as well, because I don't take my computer to closings, of course. Well, I shouldn't say of course. I do take it, but I don't usually walk in with it open in front of me. So usually I am in the parking lot pulling up on the phone each matter so I can look at each person before I walk in the room. Of course, you have to get there a little early to do that, but also a good thing to do. Again, data entry is probably not your best use of your time. So if you have this information, contacts from another software, from another program, talk to your practice management software to figure out if those can be migrated in so that you don't have to spend the time and money to do it. Communications. Why are we going to keep our communications in our practice management software? When you get an email from your client saying, yes, I agree to the price change, and your assistant doesn't know about it, and so the client then calls up talking about how they have to restructure their mortgage and who should they talk to about that and what are they going to do because now they have this price change, she's going to be like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. And that's going to be not as impressive, a little embarrassing maybe for her. But again, I didn't have the time to go and tell her everything that has happened in the last 30 minutes. So if it's in the software, she can again pull it up real quick when that client calls, know exactly what he's talking about, being able to sympathize, point him in the right direction, do whatever we need to do to help him be successful. Now, if you are using some type of voice over IP system, a lot of those will work with practice management software. So for example, if you have RingCentral, Vonage for Business, if you use Ruby Receptionist for your answering service, which by the way you should, they all have the data already, and a lot of practice management software is now catching up to be able to get that data from them and enter that into your program. So for example, this is an example of Clio and Vonage for Business. When I used to use Vonage for Business, which is a whole different story. We could do a whole nother talk on voice over IP, but we won't. The nice part was that with every call that I made or that came in or out, it would enter it into Clio. So if I'm billing, makes it so much easier. I can just go back and enter in the time or enter in what I was talking about. If I'm not billing, also makes it easier to track things because now I'm going to go to that phone call while I'm on the phone. I'm going to type in, this is what we talked about, so that when my receptionist gets, or my assistant gets that call, now she knows exactly what we talked about as well. Because an email, if you're not sharing an email account, then she's not going to be able to see the email that I got. She's not going to know about it. She's not going to know what happened. If I'm able to save those phone calls and those emails and other communications in my practice management software, then again, the shared brain that she's going to be able to access is going to make us that much more successful. Yes?
What are you using instead of Vonage now to do that?
She's asking what you're using instead of Vonage now.
Yeah, the question is what do I use instead of Vonage? So I started using RingCentral many years ago And I think it's fantastic, but it's not very user-friendly. Like anytime I want to change a call rule or how the calls are handled, it's like a pain because I have to sit down and figure it out again on the computer or call their customer service, which is not that great. And so that is really painful. So for that reason, when I heard about this Vonage and Clio connection, I thought, well, great, I already use Clio, and it would be awesome to have that. So I switched over to Vonage. Turns out it can be worse. Vonage, to their credit, I thought the calls were great, all that was good. The Clio connection worked awesome. I loved that part. But I really felt like their call handling was even worse. Like I actually met in person with the Vonage people twice to try and figure out like why the calls weren't going the way I wanted and doing what I wanted, and they couldn't figure it out. And so in the end, they basically refunded my money. And I don't mean to bash Vonage or say Ring Central's that great either. My point is that just like practice management softwares, they all have their own strengths. And for me, for the price and what Ring Central was able to offer, because they also include fax and text messaging, which a lot of my clients are using text messaging, so that was very helpful to have. So for me, that was the
So you made the switch to Ring Central?
I went back to Ring Central.
I have to say, if you do independent review analysis on this, you may find that Ring Central is a good option. But I don't get a cut, so it's just an observation.
No, and that was my experience. I went back, despite their customer service and despite the call handling. What I would like to look at, which I haven't yet, is some of the smaller, not as large programs like 8x8.
8x8 has been one. Intermedia that Costco promotes is another one. There's a bunch out there.
Yeah, so I know there's a ton of options, just like practice management software. So definitely something you should look into. Again, I picked Ring Central because I wanted the fax and the phone and the text messaging all combined at a reasonable price. That's why I went that way. Okay.
Let me just interject if
Yes.
I may, because we've got still plenty of time and I want questions here. If on the web you're having trouble seeing the slides, it's a contrast issue in terms of lighting. Anybody who's on Facebook Live wants to see the actual slides, you can go to www.irela.org. Look at the blog post with Melanie's picture. Scroll down a few lines, you'll see a link where you can download the PDF of the slides that are being used this morning.
Thanks, Rob. So we saw the slide that talked about phone calls being integrated into the practice management. The other important thing we kind of alluded to a minute ago was the emails being in the practice management. So again, different practice management programs handle it differently. Smokeball has an excellent integration with the emails, so that's not really an issue with them. Clio handles it by using a separate email address for each matter. So if you wanted an email to be in Clio, you would either forward a copy to this matter-specific email address or blind copy to another person on this matter-specific email address so that they do show up in Clio when you send them to that address. So again, each program does it differently, and some actually don't integrate with emails. So you'll have to weigh the pros and cons of what's going to be best or easiest for your practice. Email sharing. I gotta say, I'm not a fan of people in the workplace sharing an email address. And here's the reason. I mean, I get when there's like, an info@melanieleonard.com or, information at whatever. I get that. But my concern is like if I'm just writing to assistant or attorney or whatever, a shared email address somewhere, I'm always afraid that it's not gonna get addressed because there are multiple people that are supposed to be monitoring this email. And does one think that one is handling it and in the end nobody handles it? I'm not saying that happens all the time, of course, but if you are sharing email addresses, I would encourage you to look at that and see, email's pretty cheap these days. So it may not be worth the money to actually be doing that. It may, in the end, be easier for you to have a separate email address for that very reason, for that being able to track and monitor that stuff. Okay, moving on. I feel like I went down to Cook County and took a picture of their file room. I didn't, I actually had to pay for this one, but it would have been cheaper because we're gonna talk about documents and document storage and what you're doing with documents because now online storage is so cheap I feel like it's not malpractice, but it's definitely riskier just keeping paper in your office, because the office is going to burn down, someone's going to steal it. A lot of people share offices. I don't mean to imply that other attorneys would steal your documents, but I do mean to imply that they have other clients and other contractors that are coming into the office that you don't necessarily know anything about. So having that documentation only in paper form, only on your desk or in your file cabinet or something, in my mind, is a big risk. So there are practice management softwares that do house documents. There are other document housing systems that I'm sure you've heard about, like Dropbox and Box and all those, that also house documents that can be integrated with practice management software. So for example, in my office, we use Dropbox. Ralph will tell you about how you need to use Dropbox for business and not just personal Dropbox, and he'll do a topic on that another day. But make sure that whatever system that you're using, make sure that you've investigated to some extent or to a large extent, the security of that system. So for example, one of the benefits of housing your documents in Clio is that Clio has very strong encryption and very strong security that maybe some of the other software out there doesn't. And I don't mean to imply none of them do, but I just mean check on it, whatever software you're using, to make sure that they have that security. Now, it also, the other reason that we like to keep our documents in a practice management software is it allows us to share documents with other people. So, for example, Clio has a client portal. My clients can log on, see the documents we've shared with them, access them that way. Or let's say I'm working with you on the other side of a deal. I'm not going to make you, have your own Clio account, but I might send you an email with a link instead of an actual attachment. You can click on that link and you'll get the attachment. But why didn't I send it as an attachment? 2 reasons. Number one, maybe I didn't want to clog up your email inbox, which I can appreciate on the receiver's side. Or maybe number 2, it may be more secure, because here's the situation. Let's say your email is hacked a year from now, and I sent you that document, and it's no longer sitting in your email inbox. In fact, that link has now expired. So even if the bad guys get into your email and now they're searching around and snooping around, they're not going to be able to see that document because that link has expired. So for security reasons, for storage reasons, it's nice to house the documents digitally in the practice management software so that not only you can track them, but again, the other people in your organization can have access to those as well. And again, with more and more people using virtual assistants or people outside of their office, it does make it easier to be able to share that information. Let's see. Okay, I think this is my last topic here. Custom fields. What I mean by custom fields is a lot of practice management software will allow you to create your own fields or boxes of information that you can then fill in. So for example, Clio has particular fields that it will give you, that you have to use for all matters. So for example, when did it start? Who's the responsible attorney? Is it billable? All that kind of stuff. So those are by default. Clio puts those in there. You can use them for any and all matters that you want. But again, me doing real estate, there's other information that I want to see on the screen quickly to be able to reference and not have to search through the contract for, or search through the documents for. So I went through and made my own custom fields for real estate. Now again, you can, in Clio anyway, you can make a set of fields for real estate, a set of fields for estate planning, a set of fields for whatever you're doing. And other practice management software also allows you to do fields. Not all of them, so check with them first, of course, if you want this feature. But basically, I made my own fields. So for example, how does my client prefer to communicate? Oh, I have a pointer. This one prefers text. There's the PIN number. It's a city, it's not a village, and we'll tell you in a few minutes why that's important. Zip code, earnest money, purchase price, all of it's here. And what happens is I reference it by paragraph in the contract so that when my assistant gets the contract, she goes through, starts this Clio matter, she's putting in all the information. I didn't put this in. 105% tax proration, what's the deadline for attorney review, when, who's paying for the survey. All this stuff is in here for 2 reasons. Number 1 reason is because when my client calls and says, oh, my appraisal came in low it's only $200,000, and I'm like, wait, that's low? I don't even remember your purchase price, right? So I'm clicking on their matter and I'm seeing, oh, right, the purchase price is $239. Yeah, that would be a problem. So it's easy access. Whereas if I have to open up that contract, thankfully the purchase price is on the first page. But if I want to know about any closing cost credits, I'm going to page 10. And you know, that's not to say it's that slow, because I can just type 10 into my Adobe Acrobat. But the reality is, the longer it takes me, the longer that conversation is going to be, the less I get done in a day, the less closing I'm going to do in a month, so on and so forth. So in my office, as fast as things move, a second or a click or 3 clicks can slow us down. And the more information I have at my fingertips like this, the more helpful it's going to be, not just to me, but to my staff as well, so that we can talk intelligently about the subject and not spend half the conversation looking for the information that we wanted to talk about in the first place. So in addition to my custom fields that I filled in up here, I also have some fields down here at the bottom that I will only use for the purposes of drafting a letter. So, and when I say that, I mean some practice management software will allow you to use those custom fields when you create documents. So letters, engagement letters, attorney review letters, motions, whatever it is you're writing. It can feed information into that document from your custom fields. So what I did was I went through and I made fields about closing cost credits, about pest inspections, about all kinds of stuff that I may not always want to know, but my documents, my attorney review letters are set up so that I go into Clio, I say make a document from a template. I want to use the template called seller attorney, let's do buyer attorney review letter. It's going to look at my custom fields and say, oh, there's an HOA, then we're going to go ahead and ask for HOA documents. And I have a paragraph, as I'm sure you all do, where we request the HOA documents. Oh, it's got 105% tax proration. Well, you know, we're going to put in a paragraph asking for, you know, a different tax proration because it's in Cook County or something like that. So those form paragraphs that I'm using day in and day out on all my letters, I don't have to actually copy and paste them anymore. My assistant doesn't have to copy and paste them anymore. Clio puts the letter together for me, spits it out in a Word version so that I have a draft of an attorney review letter that now I can go and look at and say, okay, this was great, but in our situation we want to add this, and I add another paragraph. Or, you know, usually we ask for 110%. In this case, we want to ask for 108%. I don't know. So then I can change it in my Word document. But the reality is that no one had to write that draft for me. I didn't have to do it. My assistant didn't have to do it. It took about 5 seconds on the software to come up with a draft. It takes me far less time to edit that draft than it did for my assistant to come up, you know, copy and paste the draft for me, or for me to do it myself. So the time and energy and money that I'm saving is going to help me to be more productive and more efficient in the future in handling the next matter that comes along. So again, not all practice management software has custom fields, so if that's a feature you think would be helpful to you, make sure to ask about it. They also, like I was talking about Smokeball, they have awesome templates. So if you're doing especially litigation, they may have templates already for you that you don't have to build yourself. I built my own templates. Clio allows you to do that. Just ask the practice management software that you're considering to see what your options are, because again, for me and my office, that is a huge time and money saver. Okay, let's see here. Last slide. If you're thinking about doing something with custom fields, and I would highly encourage you to, because even though it takes a little time up front to write those templates and stuff like that, it is a huge time saver. Here are some tips that I have for you before you go. Designate one person in charge of putting in the custom fields, because what can happen is, you know, Ralph thinks we need to have the purchase price. I say, oh yeah, that's great. I think we need to have the purchase price too. I didn't talk to Ralph, and now we got 2 purchase price fields. Can be very confusing to the software when you go in to try and create letters that reference the purchase price. Which one are we referencing? So make sure to do that. Organize your custom fields. When you're looking at a screen like this and it's got all this information, it can be hard for your eye to know where to go. So if you're putting it in some type of logical order, then that's going to be helpful to you. Or if you're grouping it in some manner that makes sense to you, that's going to be easier for you to use as well. Keep the fields consistent. If you're always using different fields for different matters, you're not going to know where to look. It's going to be more complicated. If you keep them consistent, again, everyone's going to have an easier time using it. Use Control F to find the field you're looking for. Again, when you're looking at a screen like this and you don't know where the tax expirations are, Control F will help you type in tax, and it will find the word tax on the screen everywhere that it shows up. So that'll help you find the information you're looking for more quickly. If you want to use templates, like we've been talking about, go through. I'm sure your firm already has templates, even if you don't call them templates. What's the matter that you always look to, because it was a really great attorney review letter, and you're going to take that and copy in all the information that you need for this matter. Review those. Make sure that they're ones you really want to use. Maybe Karen's using this matter from 10 years ago, and Susan's using this matter from 5 years ago. Let's compare them and make sure that they're what you want before you put them in the software. And then every time you write a letter or fill out a form, whatever you're doing in your office, take a second to think, should I make it a template? And if you're doing it more than like once a week, yeah, you probably should make it a template, or once a month even, make it a template. The amount of time it takes to write the letter or copy and paste the letter versus making the template is not that much more. And you're going to get so much more benefit in the end from doing that. And then lastly, some software will let you use what are called conditional fields. So a conditional field says, if the information is yes, then put this in the paragraph, this paragraph in. If the information's no, then put this paragraph in. An if-then statement. It can make your templates so much more robust in being able to use a field like that instead of just, $500 is what we charge. $500 goes in the letter. It can open up a whole world of opportunities for you. So, thank you so much for your time. Before I go, does anybody have any questions? I know it was a lot of fast
I'm sure there are questions.
Thank you, a lot of good information. I have a question about your document storage. Are you using Dropbox and saving them into Clio, or just Dropbox and using a link in Clio?
Good question. So I wasn't very clear with that. In my office, I use Dropbox, and I have it synced to Clio, so that any document I put in Clio goes in Dropbox and vice versa. They sync to each other. The reason I do that is because I want those documents in Clio so that I can share them with my clients very quickly. So that when I say, okay, I'm going to send you a copy of this letter, I just go into Clio, click share, put in their name, done, right? So that's very easy and fast for me. However, if I want to actually work on the document and change the document, edit the document, Clio, with their way their documents are currently set up, you have to download the document to your computer, make the changes, and upload it back to Clio. I don't have time for that. That just takes far too many seconds that I'm not willing to sacrifice. So I use Dropbox so that when I just make the change on my computer, it automatically syncs up to Clio. So I don't have to worry about that downloading and changing and uploading. So yeah, that's the way we do it in our office for that reason, because we share a lot of documents with our clients, and I don't want to spend the time to download and upload every time I want to edit. So depending on your practice management software, they handle it different ways. Now, Clio does have an integration actually with Word 365, so if you have that, you can actually edit the document right into Clio, but we haven't hooked that up yet.
Does Clio have an accounting component to it? And if not, what do you use for accounting, and how does that interact with Clio?
Yes, Clio will track your client trust account and your operating account. I love that for the client trust because, I remember the ARDC handed out these forms, an example of how to balance your client trust account, and I found them far more complicated than actually balancing a client trust account. Anyway, so with this software, I find it very easy because it tracks, what client gave me what money and how much of it we've used and all that kind of stuff. So yes, I definitely use it for tracking my client trust. I don't use it for my operating account, although it would probably be a good idea. We have been using Microsoft Money for quite some time before I had my practice, so we just continued using that. But that's not to say at all that that's the best option. Did I say Microsoft Money? I meant, no, that's not what I meant.
QuickBooks?
No.
Does it interface with QuickBooks?
It's called iBank.
iBank.
Again, I'm not saying it's the best, I'm just saying that's what we use.
Does it interface or interact with QuickBooks?
It does not.
Does not?
Clio does.
Clio, that's what I'm asking.
iBank does not.
Gotcha.
Yes, Clio, it does sync with
It's a fairly common
QuickBooks.
pairing, yeah.
Yes. Anybody
More
else?
questions?
Okay. Thanks so much for your time, you guys. It was a great opportunity to come present to you.
Yeah.
And let me know if you have any other questions.
Thank you so much, Melanie. You know, I have to say I do cybersecurity presentations, and she alluded to that when she talked about Dropbox for business versus Dropbox. This really had my geek endorphins going off the charts. So I think this is one of the best presentations we've had. So let's give her another round of applause. Thank you, Melanie.